to Afternoon Edition. It's Nell and Sarah, and we're with you for the next 20 minutes or so on 5 Live. And the aunt of a little girl who was mauled to death by a dog says stronger laws are needed to make sure it doesn't happen again. Little Lexi Branson was just 4 and she died a month after her mum adopted a dog from a Leicestershire rehoming centre in 2013. Her auntie, Victoria Whiteman, has started a petition to have stronger regulations governing rehoming centres. Earlier I had a chat with Victoria and she started by telling me about Lexi.
When I first met Lexi, she was premature. She was in the Leicester Royal Infirmary in the incubators, and she could fit inside your hand. And from the moment we met her, she was always angelic, and she was a fighter. And she always had a smile on her face. And for what she'd gone through in a short length of life, she's left a permanent mark on us, because she was always smiling. And to think that we'll never see her like that again, it's something which we've got to live with.
What happened when the dog was adopted, and when did it happen?
Our Jodie had approached a rehoming centre because for many years, I've always said, and I've always drummed into her, go to a rehoming centre and give a dog a second chance. And she actually took me up on it. She approached a rehoming centre because Lexi adored animals. And she always loved being around animals. She was always inquisitive. When I had a tortoise, and she'd always do things was interested why it was in the shell, and from a very, very young age. But she'd approached this rehoming centre to give the dog a second chance. With that, the rehoming centre got hold of Mulan, and a couple of weeks later on social media I kept seeing these photos of Mulan. She gave in and she went to view the dog. The dog, I think, was in a bit of a state, and she looked at the dog and they decided that they liked the dog, and they went home and thought about it, and it wasn't a quick decision. And then they went back, said they wanted the dog, paid the money, and took the dog home.
Mm-hmm. This was a female rescue dog. It's called Mulan. It was a bulldog cross. What do you now know about that dog that Lexi's mum didn't know then?
It was only because of the inquest that we found out that this Mulan had about 6 to 8 owners in her life. She was about 6 to 8 years of age, and we don't know what sort of life she had. But the thing is, so the person near the end decided to contact an advert and went to view Mulan. Took her home, and within 24 hours she had attacked his dog so severely that he panicked for the safety of his own children, and he contacted the dog warden, and they came and picked her up, believing that she was a stray in the park. So this could have changed. It could have turned out differently.
Yes, I understand. So what happened then, Victoria, on that day in November 2013?
Our Lexi they'd only had the dog less than a month, and the dog, there must have been a trigger, and the dog mauled our Lexi, and she died.
How did that affect you and Jodie and everybody else?
It's a living nightmare. We can't get over it. Simple things like we can't have closure until laws change. We got promised and we got thought that things were in place for things to change, and we've been patiently waiting. And 2 years we were waiting for a reply from the coroner, and we are still waiting for something to change. And we believe that the coroner had powers to put things into place, and things haven't changed, and children are still dying under the same sort of circumstances, being rehomed by rehomes. Dogs being rehomed from centres which aren't, because there's no guidelines in place at this moment in time.
You don't have to tell people what the dog's history is currently. There's no legal requirement for a rehoming centre to tell a prospective owner what the prior history of the dog is.
Well, no, there's nothing actually in place. There's no education. There's no actual dog behaviourists needing to go into rehoming centres to look at the dog. You think a dog's been abandoned or a dog has been put into a rehoming centre, and they can, at this time, a dog can be rehomed within a week without any guidelines put into place. That shouldn't be happening. That is dog trading. There's no thought or care into that poor animal. If it's been caged, that poor dog's got to go through the trauma of, why am I here, for a start? Dogs can't talk. If I wanted to go and adopt or foster a child, I've got to have education. I've got to have home checks done. None of that happened with Lexi, or with Mulan going to be rehomed by Lexi and Jodie. No, nobody actually went to their flat, assess it. Nobody even, after Jodie said, I've got some issues here. Nobody actually even went out to check to say. All she got told was, "Oh, don't worry, the dog's settling in." But that should not have ever happened. A dog should get the loving care that they need. We just want to get things put into place for animals.
And, you would be, like myself, and an advocate of rehoming centres and of giving a dog that maybe hasn't had the best time of it a loving home. How do you feel about that now that you advise Jodie to go to a rehoming centre?
I feel guilty. I feel responsible because the fact being, this day and age, I never have thought, if I went to see a rehoming centre, I never asked questions of what qualifications, what training, what backgrounds they've had. You see a sign for a rehoming centre, and you think they're all under the same guidelines as the RSPCA, Battersea Dogs Home. You think that they have got things in place, and you wouldn't think of questioning on what sort of background you've got. What experiences you've been through, and until things like that change, things like this are going to keep on happening, and it's not fair either on the dog or the families who are put in that situation. You can't replace a child, or you can't replace what you've lost.
And that was Victoria Whiteman, who's the aunt of Lexi Branson, who was mauled to death by a dog in 2013.
A coroner's report after Lexi's death said no detailed assessment was carried out as to the suitability of the applicant for the dog in question when taking into account her home and family circumstances, nor was any home visit made by the kennels to assess the home environment.
Well, the 2014 report raised a number of concerns about the lack of local or national standards when you rehome a stray dog. It recommended that action be taken by authorities to prevent future deaths. Five Lives contacted the 4 concerned authorities and the departments today to ask what their responses have been. So Leicester City Council have told us this was an extremely tragic case. It will be impossible for us to kennel all stray dogs indefinitely. We have a legal responsibility to pick up stray dogs and pay for their kenneling for the first 7 days. Ownership of the dogs then passes to the kennels. Five Live has not as yet had responses from the other authorities, but I imagine for you listening, this affects an awful lot of you. I'm sure an awful lot of you have been to rehoming centres and feel